There comes a moment in life when the body whispers what the mind refuses to accept. Aging is not just a number, it's a silent language that only those who pay close attention can understand. When someone reaches their final stretch of years, the signs are often subtle, so subtle that many overlook them until it's too late. But if you look closely, you'll see it in the way they move, the way they speak, and even in the quiet moments when they think no one is watching. One of the first, most overlooked changes is a sudden shift in their daily rhythm. The elderly often stick to routines. It's their way of maintaining stability in a world that constantly changes. But when those routines start to unravel, when they begin to lose interest in things they once enjoyed, when they no longer follow their cherished morning habits or forget to complete simple daily tasks, it's not just forgetfulness. It's their body and mind slowing down, signaling a transition. A person who once enjoyed reading the newspaper every morning may leave it untouched for days. Someone who loved tending to their garden may suddenly lose the motivation to step outside. These changes aren't random. They are messages, signs of an energy that's beginning to fade. A famous quote by Haruki Murakami comes to mind. Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. This truth is often difficult to accept. Watching a loved one change in ways we don't recognize can feel like watching sand slip through our fingers, no matter how tightly we try to hold on. Their conversations also begin to shift. You may notice they start talking about the past more than the present. Stories from decades ago take on new importance, as if they are piecing together the meaning of their life. They recall childhood memories, lost friendships, moments of deep joy, and regrets they've carried for years. This is not just nostalgia, it's a reflection, a quiet preparation, as if their soul is taking stock of its journey. And then there's the look in their eyes. It's not something that can be described easily, but you'll recognize it if you see it. A kind of knowing, a depth that wasn't there before. It's as if they've begun to see life from a different perspective, one that we, caught up in the rush of everyday existence, can't quite comprehend. These subtle signs are often brushed off as just old age, but they are much more than that. They are the body's way of signaling the nearing of an unseen threshold. The question is, are we paying attention? Aging is a journey where the body and mind slowly retreat from the world they once embraced so fully. And when a person enters their final year, this withdrawal becomes more pronounced, though rarely acknowledged for what it truly is. Loved ones often mistake it for fatigue, disinterest, or just the natural slowing down of old age. But if you observe carefully, you will notice that this withdrawal is not just from activities, but from life itself. One of the most heart-wrenching signs is their quiet detachment from social interactions. A person who once enjoyed conversations, family gatherings, or even simple phone calls may now respond with distant nods, half-hearted smiles, or long silences. They listen, but their mind seems elsewhere. They are present, yet absent. Even when surrounded by loved ones, there's a certain loneliness in their eyes, as if they are slowly stepping back from the world, one interaction at a time. You might notice them excusing themselves early from conversations or choosing to sit in a corner rather than engage. It's not because they don't care. It's because they are processing something deeper than words can express. And then there's the change in their emotional responses. Some become more sentimental, their eyes welling up at the simplest things, a childhood story, an old song playing in the background, or even the sight of grandchildren playing in the garden. Others grow more irritable, frustrated by things they once ignored. This shift in mood isn't just aging, it's a reflection of something unspoken, an internal battle between holding on and letting go. A nurse who spent decades caring for the elderly once said, "In the last stretch of life, people either become incredibly gentle or unexpectedly distant. It's not personal. It's just their way of preparing for what's to come." Sleep also becomes a telling sign. Many elderly people in their final year experience a change in their sleep patterns, not just the usual restlessness of old age, but something different. They sleep more during the day, but remain awake at odd hours of the night, sitting in silence as if waiting for something they can't quite explain. Others begin having vivid dreams, sometimes about people who have long passed away. These dreams seem to carry a deeper meaning, almost as if they are glimpses into another world, a bridge between the life they know and the unknown that awaits. And then there's the unexpected bursts of clarity. You may have noticed this. An elderly person who has been forgetful, weak, and slow for months suddenly becomes alert, sharp, and almost like their younger self for a brief period. They smile more. They talk with a sense of peace. They seem unusually energetic. This phenomenon is well documented but not fully understood. Scientists call it terminal lucidity, a sudden mental clarity that occurs shortly before death. It's as if, for a fleeting moment, they are given the gift of one last goodbye, one final chance to see life clearly before they take their last step forward. Leo Tolstoy once wrote, "Each person's departure from this world is as unique as their entry into it." And it's true. No two people experience their final days the same way, but the signs are always there, if we are willing to see them. Perhaps the most difficult thing is accepting these changes, not fighting them. We often want to pull them back, keep them engaged, encourage them to be more active. But sometimes, what they need is simply to be understood, to have someone sit beside them in silence, without trying to change anything, to be held without being told to hold on, to be loved without pressure to stay longer than they are meant to. Because in the end, the most beautiful thing we can offer them is not just care. It's the deep, unspoken understanding that we see them, we honor their journey, and we will walk with them until they are ready to let go. The body speaks in ways that words never can. It carries the weight of every memory, every joy, and every sorrow. And when a person reaches their final year, the body begins to let go, not suddenly, but gradually, like a slow and silent farewell. These changes aren't always dramatic, which is why they often go unnoticed. But if you look closely, you'll see the quiet surrender in the way they walk, the way they eat, the way their hands tremble slightly when reaching for a glass of water. One of the first physical signs is a noticeable change in appetite. Food, which once brought comfort and enjoyment, starts to feel unnecessary. They begin eating less, not because they are sick, but because their body no longer craves it. Meals that were once a routine part of their day become smaller, less frequent. Sometimes they push their plate away after just a few bites, or they claim they're not hungry, even when they haven't eaten much. This isn't stubbornness or forgetfulness. It's the body slowly adjusting, preparing for a transition. Medical professionals often refer to this as the body's natural way of conserving energy when it no longer needs to sustain itself in the same way. It's not something that can be reversed with encouragement or reminders. It's simply the body signaling that it's winding down. Families often worry, trying to get them to eat more, to drink more, but forcing it doesn't change the course of nature. The truth is, their body knows what it's doing. Another sign is the way they move, or rather, how movement itself becomes more difficult. It's not just about growing weak with age. It's deeper than that. They start walking slower, as if their legs are carrying a weight that wasn't there before. Stairs become a challenge. Standing up takes longer, and even the simple act of turning over in bed becomes an effort. Some elderly people begin to sit still for long periods, almost as if they are conserving their energy for something only they understand. And then, there's the change in their hands and feet. They might feel colder, look paler, or develop a bluish tint. This happens because circulation slows down. The body prioritizes the heart and brain, reducing blood flow to the extremities. These small, almost unnoticeable details are often dismissed as just another sign of aging, but in reality, they are whispers of the body retreating, holding on to only what is essential. A doctor once shared a profound observation. When the end is near, the body no longer fights for survival. It shifts its focus from sustaining life to making peace with what comes next. There's also an unmistakable change in their breathing. It becomes shallower, slower, sometimes uneven. In the final months, and especially the final weeks, their breathing pattern changes. They might take longer pauses between breaths, almost as if they are hesitating between staying and going. Some days, their breath will be steady, while other days, it may become labored and slow. This is known as Cheney-Stokes breathing, a pattern often seen in those nearing the end of life. It's not painful, but it's one of the most telling signs that the body is preparing to let go. During this time, the eyes tell their own story. They may appear more sunken, less focused, as if they are looking past the physical world. Sometimes, they stare into the distance, fixating on something unseen. Some elderly people report seeing loved ones who have already passed, speaking softly to figures that no one else can see. These experiences are not hallucinations in the medical sense. Many believe this is the mind's way of transitioning between worlds, a bridge between what was and what will be. The great philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back." And perhaps that's what these final moments of clarity are, an unspoken understanding between the body and the soul. A moment where fear fades, replaced by something more peaceful, more accepting. For those who witness these changes in their loved ones, it can be incredibly difficult. We want to hold on, to believe that if we just help them eat more, walk more, stay engaged, they'll somehow defy the inevitable. But the truth is, the body knows when it's time to let go. It doesn't happen in an instant. It happens in these small, quiet ways, through a lost appetite, slower steps, colder hands, distant eyes. And the most important thing we can do in these moments is not to resist, but to be there, to hold their hand when it trembles, to sit with them in silence when words are no longer needed, to accept that, just like the seasons, life has a rhythm, and this part of the journey is just as sacred as the beginning. As the final chapter of life unfolds, words take on a different weight. Conversations grow softer, slower, and more meaningful. The elderly, in their last stretch of time, often speak in ways that hint at a deeper awareness. They may not say outright that they feel the end approaching, but their words, their gestures, their lingering looks all seem to carry a quiet farewell. One of the most profound changes in this stage is a shift in priorities. The need for material things fades into the background, replaced by an intense focus on relationships, on moments, on emotions. You'll notice that they no longer talk about the everyday worries that once consumed them: bills, news, social obligations. Instead, they speak of memories, of long-lost friends, of childhood places, of lessons learned. It's as if their mind is sorting through a lifetime of experiences, trying to hold on to the ones that truly mattered. Sometimes, they bring up people who have already passed. They might mention a parent, a sibling, or a spouse as if they had just spoken to them moments ago. They may recall an event from decades ago with perfect clarity, as if time itself is folding in on them, bringing the past closer. Some even say they see or feel the presence of loved ones who have been gone for years. Science may call these experiences hallucinations, but many believe they are something more, something beyond what we can measure or explain. A hospice nurse once shared a moving story. "In my years of caring for the dying, I've seen the same thing happen over and over. People start talking to someone invisible. They smile at the ceiling. They reach out their hands as if someone is waiting for them. I don't believe this is just the brain playing tricks. I believe it's a sign that they're being welcomed into whatever comes next." In these final months, regret and forgiveness take center stage. Many elderly people feel an urgency to make amends, to right old wrongs, to heal relationships before it's too late. Some will reach out to estranged family members, while others will finally open up about emotions they kept buried for years. This is why it's important to listen, really listen, when an elderly person starts reminiscing or bringing up unresolved conflicts. Sometimes, all they need is to know that they are forgiven or that their love was understood. But not all goodbyes are spoken out loud. Some are simply felt. There's a moment, one that's hard to describe but easy to recognize, when an elderly person starts withdrawing from the world. They talk less, not because they don't have thoughts, but because they are turning inward. They spend more time resting, not because they are tired in the way we understand, but because their energy is shifting. They become content sitting in silence, gazing out of the window, absorbing the world in a way that words cannot capture. This is the phase where presence becomes more important than conversation. Sitting beside them, holding their hand, offering them a sense of peace, is far more meaningful than trying to fill the space with words. They may not ask for much, but your presence, your willingness to be there in their quiet moments, speaks louder than anything else. There's something deeply poetic about these final moments. Leo Tolstoy, in his final days, was said to have whispered, "The truth is, I love you all." Simple words, yet they carried the weight of a lifetime. This is why, when an elderly loved one starts expressing their love more often, when they hold your hand a little longer, when they look at you as if trying to memorize your face, don't brush it off. Don't assume it's just another ordinary moment, because to them, it may be one of their last. Then comes the final surrender, a moment that is both heartbreaking and beautiful. Some people wait until they are alone, slipping away in the quiet of the night. Others seem to hold on until they've said goodbye to the ones they love. In either case, their departure is rarely dramatic. It's often just a breath, a pause, and then stillness. It's in that moment that everything else falls away. The worries, the regrets, the trivial details of life. What remains is the love they gave, the kindness they shared, the lives they touched. And as hard as it is for those left behind, there's something peaceful in knowing that they are no longer in pain, no longer struggling, no longer bound by time. Khalil Gibran once wrote, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." Grief is not just about loss. It is proof that someone mattered, that their presence left a mark, that they were loved deeply, and that love doesn't simply disappear. It lives on in the stories we tell, in the habits we picked up from them, in the way we carry them forward in our hearts. So if you are seeing these signs in someone you love, take a deep breath and be present. Don't rush to fix, to change, to resist what is happening. Instead, honor it. Honor their journey. Honor their love. And most of all, let them know that they are not alone. Because in the end, that's all any of us really want. To leave this world knowing we were loved, knowing we mattered, knowing that we will be remembered not just for how we left, but for how we lived.